Hello, good morning, and welcome. This is Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Rise and shine. It's a beautiful Friday morning here in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Kayode Okikilo, and you're welcome.
Wait, did I hear someone say, thank God it's Friday? How come I never hear thank God it's Monday?
Please, why is there... I mean, thank God it's every day, really. But what is special about Fridays?
I'm wondering.
You're wondering?
Yes.
Well, you just said, did you hear anybody say thank God it's Friday?
I guess, like, someone said... But what you are likely to also hear is, oh, God, it's Monday.
I know, right? No, thank God it's Monday. And I think it's the cycle for most workers. I mean, Monday to Friday is where you get to work, and then Friday comes, you're looking forward to the weekend. Yeah. But clearly not for us. So I don't think it's in our own dictionary. It's like, thank God it's every day for us.
Right.
Really.
Is it thank God it's every day, or oh God it's another day?
Well, thank God it's another day. I mean, that's the best you can do. Be thankful, because a lot of things are happening, and it could be worse, really. I know it's not a phrase people want to hear, because they're like, you know, I've had it up to here, so how bad can it be, or worse can it be? But it could actually be worse. I won't begin to talk about what's going on in Ukraine and the whole situation, the humanitarian situation, and it talks about this might even get worse. And I know people will say, God forbid again, God comes into the picture, but absolutely, it could be worse.
One of the things that's a little troubling, of course, we'll be getting into that, maybe not in the details, you know, of that, is that, you know, the Ukrainian president is saying as far as right now, it's like, he seems to be on his own. But how that will play out, I guess we'll see. But, you know, even in our own part of the world, in Nigeria, here in Africa, of course, African Union has spoken about that as well. But, you know, there is this conversation about this fuel or no fuel, this back and forth. Again, we'll get into that. It's one of those things that are happening in the course of the week.
And I think that's why it's sometimes hard to see what's happening in other climes, because we have enough on our plate,
more than enough.
On our platter, you know, as it were. It's been quite an interesting week. And, I mean, this is just a recap of this week. Very, very roller coaster kind of week. Yeah. The fuel scarcity starting the week, and dare I say, it's still very much here, because the situation has not normalized just yet, and we'll be looking into that. So the fuel scarcity was what woke a lot of people up into the week, and then there was the threats in Russia, but we didn't quite focus on that. And then there was the expectation the president was going to sign the electoral bill into law. That didn't quite happen just yet, but we expect that today it will happen. And then fast forward, we were in the National Assembly, and the Constitution review came up again, and it looked as though, okay, this is going forward as well. The electoral bill, we're focusing on it, one eye, the Constitution amendment, and then the wife of the president visits just to, you know, support women. I think that was a major highlight, because I'm not sure that has happened at some point. So I think it's a win for women. And, you know, ASU strike, which is like the sore point for me. Not because I'm in school, honestly, and at this point, it honestly looks like we're crying more than
you're in school, you just don't have an ASU lecturer.
Okay, the school of life.
You know, but you see, that, for me, underscores one very important thing, and that is how far or not we are bringing the young people into the sphere of our lives. You know, we say this over and over again. I remember the president speaking to that recently as well. We understand the vice president has been talking about that for way before he even came into governance and all. And a good number of people are talking along that line. The president of the AFDB has always been almost like he's up in arms about, you know, getting youth into the fray, seeing them more as assets than liabilities, developing them and all of that. So, but each time I hear an ASU strike, education not getting its pride of place. So all kinds of occurrences in primary schools, secondary schools, in universities. My heart is just asking questions upon questions upon questions. Are we really serious about giving attention to the young people? Are we really serious about building a nation that will last for generations? Are we really looking forward? It's a question that I keep asking. And if you would ask me, Kay, I would say ASU issue is something that should take precedence over everything else. Come on, we're talking about the Constitution review, right? That's perhaps, okay, for now, it's the ground norm, for now and for the future. We're talking about the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, very, very important in the course of the year that we are in. But the young people, that's like our posterity.
Absolutely.
That's like the future. And I'm just, in my heart, I keep asking, are we really serious about building a nation that's supposed to last forever? The crop of politicians that we have today now, they will be completely out of the way in 20 years. And another set of young people, set of politicians are going to come into the fray. Are we preparing them? Those questions continue to, crop up in my mind, and I'm just wondering, all of the things that we're doing today, building Nigeria for today, development and all, to what end, really? I'm asking that question because I can't see it. Look, when we talk about leadership, we are talking about vision. Without talking about vision, you can't really talk about leadership. You can't really talk about management.
And I think this is something maybe we didn't quite pay attention to. It's been happening. I think that will be one of the sore points for this administration, the numerous strikes. I mean, it was during this administration that we had the longest ASU strike for 8-9 months. We had judiciary workers. I can't remember when last judiciary workers actually went on strike for that long, in Nigeria. We've had resident doctors go on strike time and again under different heads, as it were, ASU as well. We had ASUP, and I can go on and on. We had railway workers go on strike. I mean, I'm thinking, just who has not gone on strike just yet? I mean,
we haven't.
Oh, well, I mean, we can't. That's our job, technically. Our job is to report the strike. So, but the point is, I wonder what the attitude is towards and very key sectors of the economy, education, health for resident doctors.
Stay with those two.
I should just stay with those two,
Just stay
right?
with those two.
I mean,
we are literally jeopardizing the future with those two.
We had resident doctors go on strike during COVID, smack in the middle of COVID. And I know government has a lot to grapple with, but these areas, I can begin to talk about security. We have wins, yes, quite all right. But if government seems to be not performing up to par in those areas, then you wonder, what is the point exactly? We could do more. And I think reviewing this week, I know there's a lot of attention on 2023, the APC convention and all, which also played out during this week. But we also need to pay attention to these very important sectors of our life as a nation. Because if we drop the ball there, then all that we're building in all the other areas, we don't have any foundation to stand on. So perhaps that's our nugget for the week.
And then, we are also looking forward to another set of leaders.
Yeah.
Okay, is that the right word, really? Leaders? Anyway, we're recruiting another set of people to work for Nigeria in 2023, and the circumstances under which they will be employed. I use that word advisedly. Not because, elected, yeah, it's an employment.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that bill is going to be signed into law today, hopefully by the president, barring any other unforeseen contingency. We're just hoping that will happen.
Absolutely, and we're covering that.
Oh, absolutely.
So stay with us. We're going to give you a huge coverage right here on Channels Television.
What's that word? Blow-by-blow account?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's it. Let's take a look at some of the papers this morning. Let's begin with Vanguard newspaper this morning, and it begins with security, as you can see. Why military's reluctance to wipe out bandits. That better be taken in context, so you want to find out the details on page 5. Says terrorists control resources so huge they can destabilize Nigeria. That's a very, very, very huge one, and it shouldn't just be taken lightly. Discloses preliminary investigations implicated some police, military personnel, mutual distrust, suspicion among security agencies, fueling insecurity. That's ascribed to the DG of DSS. All of that detail you'll find on page 5 of the Vanguard newspaper. But this lead story, I would expect some people to speak to it, because it looks very, very indicting to me.
Well, it's a mixed one, actually. So this is, I mean, part of the points that were made. But then there was a talk about the wins as well. And I'm not going to go into the details because that's why you have to pick the paper. But, I mean, there's way more to this one.
All right, that's on the lead story. And right above the nameplate, Russia-Ukraine war, FG to evacuate Nigerians from Ukraine. That's ascribed to the Minister of Foreign Affairs. Rising oil prices not good for Nigeria. What does that mean? Oh, wait a minute. I hope it doesn't speak to pump price. But that's the story you find right there on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper, and a number of other stories that you will find quite interesting. Oh, 2023, I'm fit to rule Nigeria, ascribed to Tinubu. Find the details, and several others on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper today. Oh, yes, I can't forget Mr. and Mrs., but not before. There
were some protests yesterday, by the way, both on and offline. I had to apologize to Mr. and Mrs. fans worldwide.
Well, absolutely. You said I was the only one.
I think you're the chairman of the association, actually.
Well, how is sports being affected by the Russia invasion? You find this one on the back page of Vanguard newspaper. Russia invasion, footballers display solidarity for Ukraine. Find the details of that on the inside pages. Yes, Mr.
The way forward now. He explains why insurgents are surrendering.
The question of the real causes still not given due attention. Don't forget those who will, several people, security officers and all, who have talked about joblessness and poverty as the main catalysts of these problems.
But you know, the irony of it all is that, I mean, you know, some of these northwestern states as, you know, the agrarian states that can churn out a lot in terms of agriculture. But you see that these attacks happen on farms. People are kidnapped on their farms and the rest. So there's clearly land to be cultivated. There's some job available. So you wonder, is this really about that, or trying to just cripple some sort of... Because, I mean, Kaduna, for example. I mean, visited Kaduna a few times. I even joked about moving there because of the corn or the maize that they have in abundance. And that's just one of a lot of things. So clearly there are opportunities. So can we say that that's really the real cause?
To a large extent, I think we need to, first of all, get to the root of the matter. Because really, what we are doing is just like, what do you do to flowers?
You trim it.
We're trimming the problem of insecurity. That's what we seem to be doing. Those problems are there, and they didn't just start today. How did they start? How can we, okay, Malpa would say they are no longer flowers to be nipped in the bud. How can we curtail? How can we reduce to as much as possible? Because it is there and it's not just going to go away. Don't forget what the governor of Kaduna State had also said once, that look, these people already saw big money. You can't, you know, it will be difficult to bring them down to the little, you know, coins and all of that you want to give them. But we have to do something. We can't just continue to allow this to happen.
Well, big issues to chew on this morning. There are a few other riders. Autumn, over 100 security men killed in 6 years. The troops killed 63 terrorists, arrested 86 within 2 weeks. That's from the DHQ. So That's the lead story on New Telegraph this morning, and there's something about the Ukraine-Russia conflict. FG plans special evacuation flight for Nigerians as Russia invades Ukraine. And the question is, through what airspace? That's a New Telegraph.
Well, of course, that's also conditional, they will see, because the ministry has been saying when the airports open. When? That's another question altogether. We'll get to that, hopefully. Well, that's the lead of the Daily Trust newspaper as well this morning. Ukraine crisis, 12,000 students, other Nigerians trapped. Definitely not something beautiful to hear, but that's the reality. We're living in fear, scribed to students. Parents are worried. Find out who said that on page 5. FG arranges special flight operation for evacuation. That's all of that is packed on the front page. Continues, or well, the stories you'll find on page 5 of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. And right under the nameplate, investigations link police military personnel to terrorism financing. That's part of the mix you talked about earlier. Fuel price hike looms as marketers kick against 0.5 million naira shipment charge.
More like further fuel price hike looms. Because already a lot of people are buying it for higher than the official pump price. So there you go.
Okay, Electoral Act. 4 ministers, MDA heads to resign over 2023. What does that mean?
We'll find out, I guess.
Well, the story you'll find on the inside pages of Daily Trust newspaper today.
Take a look at Guardian. The Russia-Ukraine war makes its way to the front page. It's big and bold. And you see Russia-Ukraine war distorts global markets. More subsidy for petrol as cooking gas may soar. Evacuate stranded Nigerians, Reps Ohaneze lawyer tell FG. And, well, FG says we'll do so once airports are open. So that just essentially captures the highlights of yesterday's, response from the government. And it makes sense, really. But you wonder, what more can be done for these people?
I stumbled on Twitter Space yesterday. A conversation was being held around this issue, and some students were saying, look, what if the students could, what's the word now, find their way to some border country, neighboring country? Would that be okay? I don't know. Maybe if that's also something. Incidentally, at that, Twitter Space meeting, the DG of NIDCOM was also in that meeting. Excuse me, and I was saying exactly what the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is saying, that plans are on the way and all of that. But it's a tall order for government.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be focusing on that, even getting some underground, happenings for you, as it were. So stay with us right here on the program. Just one more. Rise of fintechs and flutter waves phenomenon, and I think it's worth mentioning that there's so much opportunities here, and we've seen that with these examples. So I think it's important to find a way to replicate that across other sectors. That's the Guardian for you.
Oh, you missed the president signed electoral bill as promised.
Oh, right. That's an editorial on page 12 of the paper this morning.
Okay. Well, that's on the front page of the Daily Independent this morning. It's politics. New third force to receive APC PDP defectors after primaries. I don't know what that means. Osinbajo's associates launch Citizens Unite for presidential bid, whatever that means. Find the details on the front page. Continues on the inside pages. Above the nameplate, Nigerian students in war-torn Ukraine beg Buhari for evacuation. FG agrees to evacuate Nigerians once airports reopen. All of that you'll find on the inside pages. And under the picture on the front page, fear of ICC limiting fight against bandits. Just ascribe to L5. Find the details on the inside pages. Says bandits pose more threat than Boko Haram. The details you have there. And there's this one. I look forward to becoming former president. That's ascribed to President Buhari. The details you'll find on the inside pages of the Daily Independent today.
Well, take a look at Tribune. Tribune also focuses on party politics, and you see fresh uproar in APC over party chair. It's a page 5 read, and of course, these are the things you'll expect to hear in the build-up to the convention. And under the big pictures, by the way, one of those pictures shows a bloodied civilian in eastern Ukraine, and I think that's become one of the, the major pictorials coming out of that invasion, and it sort of tells its story, seeing a bloodied civilian, a woman, it would seem, in Ukraine after the bombings. Under those big pictures, you see Electoral Act. What will become law today if Buhari signs a 119-page document? 5 million naira fine or 2 years jail or both for INEC staff refusing to disclose party membership. 100,000 naira fine or 12 months jail or both for voter inducement. And see, party shall hold special convention or nomination congress to ratify consensus candidate, and so much more. But the Tribune tries to capture that. I see, of course, Putin begins his war, invades Ukraine, over 50 killed. It's a whole lot, really. We'll be diving into that this morning. And there's sports on the back page, by the way. But before that, you see Fayemi, unbridled partisanship, inflammatory remarks, threat to Nigeria's unity. Let's leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune. And just to mention the issue around the Falcons. Falcons delayed at Abuja airport for 4 hours. Dare unhappy calls for probe. By the way, these women just, qualified for the Africa Women Cup of Nations, and this is how they're treated. We'll leave it there for the Nigerian Tribune.
That's a tall one that you just pointed out there. The front page of the Nigerian News Direct this morning, Tinubu's presidential ambition. You've done well for payback, ascribed to Oni and Arumolaron. The story you find on the inside pages, how move Nigeria from potential to reality. But that's the lead of the paper right there. And above the nameplate, bad fuel probe. Imported PMS met NNPC product specification. Britannia U writes reps.
Yorubas will say Lobaton. And,
no, you should say Lobaton.
That.
You should say Lobaton in English. Lobaton.
Oh, well, I wonder how to translate that. It means, there we go.
That's it.
It is finished.
It's finished.
But we need to get to the root of this, because it looks like we're just being kicked back and forth. Let's take Leadership Friday for you on a final note this morning and see what the lead story is. There you go. APC National Chairmanship. Aspirants reject Adamu as consensus candidate. Say selection process amounts to imposition. By the way, if the president signs the electoral bill into law today, then it means that whatever process goes on during the APC convention has to meet the provisions that talks about how consensus candidates should come about, I believe.
Clearly.
So it looks like...
No, once the president signs, it becomes law immediately. Effective. That's the term effective immediately.
Okay, so it'll be quite interesting to see. Wow. No need for soothsayer to know I fit the bill. Al-Makura, no one has been anointed. Mustafa Etsu urges party stakeholders to intervene. Of course, that's one of the other stories you find on the front page of Leadership Friday today. You can see the Vice President with some students there. Some of the pictures on that front page.
And with the leadership, we wrap up a look at the papers this morning. We're back right after now to take on the issues for the day. Please stay with us.
Explosions rang out in the capital Kyiv and other cities as Russia invaded Ukraine. They came after Russia's President Vladimir Putin ordered a military operation into Ukraine's east. Russian forces fired missiles at several cities and landed troops on Ukraine's southern coast. Several Ukrainian civilians were reportedly killed.
Телефонный разговор с президентом Российской Федерации.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky declared martial law. He also called on citizens to fight, saying weapons will be issued to everyone who wants them. Ukraine's allies have been quick to condemn Russia's actions and avowed hard-hitting sanctions.
Today, in concert with our allies, we will agree a massive package of economic sanctions designed in time to hobble the Russian economy. And to that end, we must also collectively cease the dependence on Russian oil and gas that for too long has given Putin his grip on Western politics.
These sanctions are designed to take a heavy toll on the Kremlin's interests and their ability to finance war. And we know that millions of Russians do not want war. President Putin is trying to turn the clock back to the times of the Russian Empire. But in doing so, he is putting at risk the future of the Russian people. I call on Russia to immediately stop the violence and to withdraw its troops from Ukraine's territory. We will not let President Putin tear down the security architecture that has given Europe peace and stability over many decades. We will not allow President Putin to replace the rule of law by the rule of force and ruthlessness.
Les événements de cette nuit sont
French President Emmanuel Macron says his country will respond without weakness to Russia's act of war against Ukraine, saying Russia should expect tough sanctions that would hit its military, its economy, and its energy sector. NATO chief Jens Stoltenberg says Russia has launched a cold-blooded, long-planned invasion.
This is a grave moment for the security of Europe. Russia's unjustified and unprovoked attack on Ukraine is putting countless innocent lives at risk. With air and missile attacks, ground forces and special forces from multiple directions, targeting military infrastructure and major urban centers. This is a deliberate, cold-blooded and long-planned invasion. Despite its litany of lies, denials and disinformation, the Kremlin's intentions are clear for the world to see. Russia's leaders bear full responsibility for their reckless actions and the lives lost.
Ukrainian state air traffic services has closed the country's airspace. Traffic jams have formed in the capital, Kyiv, as residents try to leave the city. Residents have also sought shelter in stations and queues forming for buses, cash points and petrol.
Hours after Russia attacked Ukraine, following the tension of war that has built up in the past weeks, lawmakers in the House of Representatives call for an urgent evacuation of Nigerians in Ukraine, even as some fear that it may be rather too late.
Concerned that if a strategic plan is not put in place to secure and provide safe passage for our citizens, they may be trapped or worse, harmed.
The President of the United States of America, about 4 or 5 days ago, said that he said with certainty that it was imminent that President Putin would order his forces into Ukraine. That was the period within which we should have used to evacuate our people from that country. We must look for how best to evacuate our citizens who are locked up in Ukraine, especially the students, because their case is very, very, very unique.
The urgency of the situation prompts the House to turn to a man who voluntarily offered to evacuate Nigerians from South Africa during the xenophobic attacks in 2019 and stranded Nigerians from the United Kingdom following the outbreak of COVID-19 in 2020, Alan Onyema.
We have somebody in this country that is very humane and is ever ready in this type of situation Chairman Airpeace, we should appeal to him the way he did it before.
I think the leader of the House, the chairman of Foreign Affairs, should liaise with the Foreign Affairs Ministry today.
With all sense
and
of responsibility,
if
sir.
nothing positive comes out of that meeting and it's all about red tape, we have to do this, we have to do that, I think you should liaise with the chairman Airpeace.
Yes.
And whatever it's going to cost the House, whatever we need to do, I think we need to leave this. You need to leave this country latest tomorrow, and head to Ukraine and head on back by Monday with as many students or citizens who are willing to come back.
As the House considers evacuation of Nigerians, there are concerns about the possibility of that evacuation, considering that Ukraine has shut its airspace to civilian flights. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
You know, Ukraine and Russia might be over 8,000 kilometers away from Nigeria, but make no mistake, the war between both countries will have and is already having effects on Nigeria on different levels. First, on the citizens living in Ukraine and perhaps in Russia as well, on our mainstay of the economy, oil, gas prices, and so much more, which is why it's important to pay attention to this now and hope that it doesn't escalate. But what are the issues at stake and how do we find our way around this? This morning we're joined on the program by Honorable Yusuf Buba. I mean, you just saw the National Assembly and some of the proceedings. He's the Chairman, Foreign Affairs Committee of the House of Representatives. Joins us via Zoom from Abuja to get a sense of what's been done at that level. We also have joining us Professor Khalifa Dikwa, who is a Professor of International Relations. He joins us from our Maiduguri studio. And also, Jesuni Omoyi is a student of Kharkiv National School of Economics. He joins us from Kiev in Ukraine. You might call that ground zero this morning. Well, gentlemen, thank you for joining us on the program. And I'd like to begin with Jesuni Omoyi because it's important to get what is exactly happening on the ground right now. It's been about 24 hours since that invasion. Can you describe to us, I mean, what has been going through your mind and what's happening on ground right now?
Well, right now, we are monitoring the situation. Kyiv generally is also being attacked. We had 2 recent bombings. That's very early this morning. But basically, the military strikes are targeted towards military infrastructure. So residential apartments and general social life is not being attacked in any way. So the major targets for these airstrikes and these drone strikes are actually military infrastructures. However, there will be some civilians definitely who would be, victims of some of these things, but they are not the targets nonetheless. Generally, also other regions of Ukraine has also been attacked. We have Odessa being attacked. We have Kharkov, Kyiv. And what's currently happening right now is that a lot of students are, walking to get to the border of Poland, and so that they can have some sort of safety in Poland right now. So most students are going through the city of Lviv, which is a direct, a train ride to or a bus ride to the border of Poland. And then from there, the Polish government has been very supportive, and they have offered to open their borders to African, immigrants, especially those who are students, and give a 15-day visa, where you would be allowed to stay there for 15 days, and also they would provide you with meal, with an accommodation, and with some basic health, supplies in case you've been affected by the war. So generally, I would say that the fight is still fairly on, but we are also monitoring and seeing what would come out of it. At the end of the day, we believe that it would all end up in very, very peaceful negotiations. And at the end of the day, we believe that Putin would relax on these sanctions.
Certainly the hope of a lot of people right now. But we understand that there are thousands, 12,000 Nigerian students in Ukraine. So clearly, we have a lot of citizens there that we need to ensure that they are well protected. How would you describe the support you've gotten from, Nigerian authorities represented in Ukraine, Ukraine primarily now, I'm not even talking Russia, but how would you describe the support, the help you've gotten?
Well, I would say it's fairly okay. Before the war started, I spoke with the ambassador, and he also was of the reasoning that we should remain calm. Okay. However, we tried to reach him yesterday through various platforms, but unfortunately, and we also tried to reach the embassy, but we couldn't get any response. And I also believe that they were trying, maybe they had a lot on their hands at that time, and they were trying to gather as much information and intel that we needed to provide an information. But in general, I would say that they've been supportive, and of course, looking at how the government has also responded in terms of creating the need to have an evacuation process, as long as with the alliance with Air Peace to get some Nigerians out of here. I think it's a very, very commendable idea, and I would love to praise them for it as well.
Well, it's only in the face of the fact that, generally there's that word out there that the airports are shut, and you also talked about the fact that some Nigerians are moving towards Poland to seek some sort of reprieve or protection for themselves. So, with the government promising to evacuate Nigerians from Ukraine and the airports shut, it definitely looks or sounds like a quagmire right there. What then are the options? What are the options for Nigerian students right now, especially when you say some are moving to Poland?
Poland, yeah. Well, when you are having a situation like this that is tense, the first thing is to remain calm and not panic. For people who are in residential, areas, I think the best option right now is to remain calm and stay indoors. Like I said earlier, the attack is not focused on residential areas. That's not where the attack is focused on. It is military infrastructure. But obviously, there will be civilians who will be victims of that strike. So the bombs and the airstrikes are not targeted into residential areas and general social life. So if you're in Kyiv or in any place in Ukraine as a Nigerian student, the best thing to do is to stay indoors right now, especially if where you are is not in any form of serious attack right now. And you have to also think of how the government is responding to this, and we have to be patient with the government because, if the airspace is short, there's nothing they can do. And so I believe that right now the Ukrainian authorities are currently, shutting down the airspace because they are also trying to save lives, and they are also trying to, protect the risk of another airstrike that of which the civilians or the people who are taking these flights would be victims of. So, but I also believe that maybe in the next 2 to 3 days, the airspace will be open because it's not only Nigerian government that is looking on how to evacuate their students. China is also thinking about that. And I do understand that there are also some countries that are also trying to take the same decision. So definitely there would be a consensus, I believe, that would come at some point where there will be an exception for diplomatic interventions. There will be an exceptions for diplomatic, interference from countries who are seeking to evacuate their nationals. So I believe that is what is going to come to be. And if Ukraine gets a lot of requests for that, I believe that they can open the airspace just for that purpose, not for anything else, not for commercial flights. But pending that time, the best thing to do is to stay indoors and still monitor the situation. And we would believe that with time, it will get better. Then if you're also thinking of going to Poland, like I said, Poland has opened borders for Nigerian students. However, we have to also be careful about the road situation because it's safer to be inside than to be on the road where you don't understand what's going to happen. And the code is also still there. So these are factors that you have to consider, or you have to think about when you're making decisions right now. But if you're calm and you don't panic, I believe that you would make some quality decisions. And at the end of the day, we'll be able to get out of this very well.
Okay, we'll come to Honorable and Prof in a moment, but just before that, Jason, I'd like to know, there are those who are of the opinion that, the government responded too late. I recall that I think one of the members on the floor was saying, well, at this point it might be too late. Do you have a sense that things should have or could have moved faster in terms of the response and the evacuation? And would you be willing to be evacuated at some point?
Well, I'm not going to put a fault on the government, honestly, about the response time, because then again, there were a lot of conflicting information before the strike actually happened. Internally, everything was going so fine, and there was constant, information from the Ukrainian government that we should be calm and everything is going fine. Okay, so I would also believe that the government was also trying to monitor the situation and not make knee-jerk decisions. So I'm not going to totally put the government at fault of this, because we were all monitoring the situations, like I said. The only countries that tried to make an evacuation process were countries that had, like some embassies in Kyiv, and there were very few. I think Canada did not even fully evacuate their nationals. They only moved their in-staff in the embassies to another city. So I would not put any blame on the government. I would say that every sovereign country were trying to monitor the situation and to see, the extent of the escalation. And now that something has happened, I can see the response from the government, which I had praised early on. So I'm not going to fault the government on that. I'm not going to put a blame on the government. I believe that it was being monitored and they were trying to make the best decisions backdoors while all of these deliberations were going on. And so the question on if I want to be evacuated, yes, I am willing to be evacuated right now. If I'm hoping that it comes, and I believe that there could be a consensus between the Ukrainian government and all of the countries that are willing to evacuate their nationals, and we can make a consensus from that, and hopefully we save the lives of people who are just students here, and who also, and get rid of the fear that is in the people's hearts, because right now there's a lot of fear in people's hearts.
All right. Well, thank you, Jason. Let's take it to Honorable Buba. It was important to get, Jason's point of view and understand what's going on right there before we now take on the other issue. So, Honorable Buba, thank you for your patience. So, Jason says he's willing to be evacuated, and that's just one side of the story. The other side is the fact that Nigeria is making plans, and on the floor of the House, we saw the proceedings and the resolution to have some sort of conversation with an airline and get that sorted out. So first, has that conversation started? Do we have an agreement now on how we're going to evacuate Nigerians when the airspace is opened?
Yes, definitely. Arrangements are in full gear to evacuate Nigerians. In fact, as you heard on the floor yesterday, the Speaker directed that the leader of the House and myself to move to Ukraine immediately to coordinate activities. And after that, we met with the officials of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the presidency, and arrangements are in full gear. And I want to say that the ambassador in Ukraine issued a press statement since 26th of January and issued phone numbers, emergency phone numbers that Nigerians can call in case they are in distress. And I am sure most Nigerians have these phone numbers and have been in contact with the embassy. Even this morning, just about an hour ago, I spoke with the ambassador, and he gave me a detailed brief on what is happening. But most importantly, the call from the ambassador to Nigerians is to remain calm. In situations like this, we have to be calm and remain where they are, because the civilians are not the target. The target are military installations. So if you have any information or any distress you can call any of the numbers issued by the embassy since 26th of January.
What exactly do you mean by what operations or the conversation preparations are in full gear? What does full gear mean? Are you saying you have the word of Air Peace or any other airline to airlift them? Has that been sorted out? Can you break down the full gear for us so we know exactly where we are and perhaps what we need to do?
What I'm saying is government, specifically the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, are making all arrangements of airlines that will move in. Immediately the airspace is open. So all the logistics and preparations to achieve that is taken care of by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I'm sure immediately the airspace is open, airlines will move in from Nigeria, evacuate our citizens.
Okay, so what exactly is the role of the House now? Because that resolution was put forward, and it came across as though the House was going to lead the charge on this, speak with Air Peace or perhaps any other airline. And I recall the leader of the House actually volunteered to be a part of that evacuation team. So how is the House, what role is the House of Reps playing in all of this?
Yeah, there was a tall order from the Speaker that the leader of the House and myself, the Chairman of Foreign Affairs Committee, should liaise with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and make arrangements to see how we will move immediately to Ukraine to coordinate evacuation of Nigerians. And we left the floor immediately to start talking with the ministry and making all necessary arrangements to move until we were told that the airspace was closed. So all arrangements are in place. The Minister of Foreign Affairs has assured us, and the role of the Parliament is to oversight the activities of the executive. So we'll keep on talking with the executive, talking with the minister. As I told you 1 hour ago, I just spoke with the ambassador in Ukraine, and he assured me that so far so good. And yesterday night, I talked with Nigerian students through tutor call, and they asked a lot of questions. And this morning, I also discussed with the ambassador to also link, and the anchor of that program will also link the ambassador to answer or talk to Nigerian students and Nigerians in Ukraine directly via the tutor call program. And I am sure once citizens are calm, once these students are calm and remain where they are, by the grace of God, things will turn for the better in a couple of days. They will be evacuated.
Yeah, Honorable, you said you spoke with the ambassador, Nigerian ambassador in Ukraine, just about an hour or so ago. Could you give us an idea of what are some of those things that has been done or that have been done for Nigerian students right there in Ukraine? Especially, what are the steps that have been taken so far as from the perspective of the ambassador in your conversation?
Yeah, just as I said, the ambassador issued a press conference and made telephone numbers available to all citizens of Nigeria since 26th of January. And from that day, even this morning, the ambassador told me that his phone number and other contact numbers of the embassy staff have been open 24/7, and they have been receiving calls and talking to Nigerians on what to do. And basically, the advice is to remain calm, remain where you are until further instructions are given. And basically, in situations like this, that is what we are expecting. Because if you go out of your location, you are exposing yourself to danger. More especially, there is an issue of language. You may go into a territory where the communication will be difficult, and you will be exposing yourself to unnecessary danger. So,
Honorable, Just a quick one before we go to Prof. You said that in that conversation with the ambassador, was there any hint as to when the airports are likely to open, since you have that mandate from the Speaker of the House of Representatives?
Well, definitely, I think there's no hint. That will be the decision of the government of Ukraine, and we hope it should be soonest.
All right. Well, let's speak with Professor Dikwa in our Maiduguri studio right now. Well, Prof, most certainly the whole world is just wondering exactly what is happening right now. It's definitely a mixed bag. From your perspective, exactly what are we dealing with here, and how does this affect Nigeria directly?
Good morning. Good morning, Ayo and Coyote. It will affect Nigeria in the sense that Nigeria is a big player in world affairs, and then if there is anything like oil glut or oil jump, the prices of oil jumps, for instance, it will also affect Nigeria. And then in the case of Nigeria, it will have to submit another budget for subsidy, the so-called subsidy. And that, again, it is in our own case, if I dare say that if Nigeria cannot deal with the few who are making the billions out of subsidy by sabotaging the fixing of the refineries and so on, let them enjoy it rather than loading it on the people of Nigeria. In terms of pricing of oil, it will affect Nigeria. And then secondly, about the students, I spoke with one of the Nigerians from Borno State in Russia, and he was able to put together a statement that anybody who could go to his place, it was out. In addition to what the ambassador did, Ambassador Shaw did a very good job. And thirdly, we have a situation in which only the National Assembly and the federal government, particularly the Federal Ministry of Works Affairs, is very swift at coming and talking about Nigerians outside when they cry foul, whatever they do, including those who are inmates somewhere else, but hardly do the same for Nigerians inside. And I dare say that there's diaspora chairman, Ms. Abike Dabiri Arewa, has been doing a very good job. I dare also advise the Minister for Foreign Affairs that it is good to always talk. It is never, as a Minister of External Affairs, never to avoid saying certain things. And he only talks when it is in the East. Hardly sees anything wrong in Europe or the West. And this is something that cannot help us. And it is for Nigeria to remain calm and neutral for now, rather than aligning with either the West or the East. It is high time for Nigeria to remain here. And Nigeria as a leader will not be cowed into taking sides, and because Nigeria will help pick its friends. It is high time we pick our friends, real friends, who do not go and let us there in the sun. And again, and in United Nations again cannot be neutral again for its bias towards Russia. Russia is one of the permanent members of the Security Council. Submitted its security concerns to NATO. NATO just snubbed Russia, refused, threatened it that something will happen to it, and we knew that nothing will happen beyond economic sanctions. And that now today Ukraine is left alone because weapons and rhetoric cannot help Ukraine. Ukraine is closer to Russia, next door neighbor. And that he said the only way the war itself will have been avoided if Ukraine had been encouraged to renounce its joining NATO for some times.
Right.
Because just put yourself in the shoes of Vladimir Putin. You wouldn't have just watched being harassed, humiliated, and then threatened. You allow your security to be taken for granted.
Okay, Prof, I mean, it's quite interesting, some of the insights you have given. But for a lot of people that this happened on, I mean, we have a lot to deal with in Nigeria, and all of a sudden they're hearing a Russian invasion into Ukraine. We'll go to break now, but when we come back, I'd like you to simplify this issue for a lot of people wondering, why are these nations at war? Is there a simple explanation? And good thing is you have a benefit from the USSR to the early 90s and up till now. So perhaps you can give an insight, a simple explanation as to why these nations are at war. And we'll take a look at the possibilities in the coming days. So please don't go away. We'll be right back.
Our first priority is to the Nigerian citizens that find themselves in Ukraine at the moment. We've been engaging over the last 3 weeks with our embassy in the Ukraine, and I've been personally in touch with the ambassador on almost daily basis since then. And of course, the big challenge was whether to issue a travel advisory for all the Nigerian students and others living in Ukraine to leave. Now, an advisory was given that those who felt the need to leave should do so. The consensus amongst the diplomatic representation of the various countries in Ukraine was that the citizens should stay. Of course, Russia was asserting that they were not going to invade, while of course the US, as we know, and some other Western countries were saying that an invasion was imminent. So it was difficult to know who to really believe. The Ukrainian government was assuring the citizens there that they should just go about their normal business. And some Nigerian students who were interviewed, said that, to all intents and purposes, they were totally oblivious and unaware of any crisis, and it was just when they turned on the news or whatever that they heard that there might be there's some issues. So so the advice from our mission was not to panic, but importantly a hotline was set up by the embassy and reaching out to all the Nigerians and letting them know the number which they can call if they were in any kind of trouble. Now, of course, the attack, military action, is underway. I've been in touch with the ambassador today. He's reassured me of the safety of the Nigerians in the Ukraine, and very importantly that so far all the attacks have been against military installations in the Ukraine. So that's the situation as of now. But of course the airports are closed, and so I've told him that there are 5 airports. Inform the Nigerians who are still in the Ukraine that once the airports are reopened, that arrange in an organized fashion for those who feel that they want to leave to go to the nearest airports to them, and we will see then how we can assist for them to leave the country. Well, some are going by land crossing into Poland and some of these countries. Our advice from the embassy is to stay calm, stay in their residence, and once there is an opportunity, the airport opening up, we'll have a coordinated approach to getting them out. So all the resources available to the embassy will be directed towards an orderly, process of evacuating those who want to leave. We have good relations with Russia. We have good relations with Ukraine as well, which is why we are urging for diplomacy. And of course, we have good relations with the U.S. We're members of the United Nations and would, this matter will almost certainly come up within the United Nations. And our position would always be to avoid violence and military conflict and to prioritize under all circumstances, peaceful resolution of disputes and prioritizing dialogue and diplomacy.
That was Nigeria's Foreign Minister, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, speaking on the situation. Well, we've also been speaking here with Jesuni Omoyi, a Nigerian in Ukraine, as well as Honorable Yusuf Buba, the Chairman, Foreign Affairs Committee in the House of Reps, and Professor Khalifa Dikwa, Professor of International Affairs, or International Relations this time around. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Well, Prof, just before we went on that break, I wanted to get a simple explanation as to what's happening in that region, because you hear words like, what the Russian president saying is not seeking to occupy the country, he just wants demilitarization, denazification. That you hear regions of Donbass, Donetsk, Luhansk, and all of it. It's a lot to grapple with. So is there a simple explanation as to why these two nations are at war?
Let me explain it in a simple way, because most of us are not good at international relations, including the academics. Sometimes we behave like local champions in our approaches to world affairs. As far as Nigeria is concerned, for instance, Nigeria is a big player in world affairs. You cannot talk about Africa without talking of Nigeria. And I was surprised to hear our minister talk about repatriating only Nigerians rather than saying all Africans. Nigeria, from henceforth, Nigeria should always talk about Africans as a whole rather than being individualistic and petty. This is not good for our image abroad. The war now, the war, about the simple way of putting it, Ukraine is a very friendly country, industrial country from which we could buy weapons and others. Similarly, Russia is one of the developed nations in the world. And therefore, the ideal thing for Nigeria is to appeal for cool heads to reign rather than taking side. Yes. So President Vladimir Putin submitted its security concerns when NATO, led by U.S., wanted to include Ukraine into NATO, which is a threat to it, just the way Crimea was to it. Because in addition to that, the West, UK, the Brexit UK, America, others began to dump weapons and near the borders. That was why in 2014 Russia decided to annex Crimea and Sevastopol, very close to it. And today, the place that is now vulnerable is Donbass side, the eastern side of Ukraine.
Honorable,
just side, which is also what do you call him, Russian speaker.
Prof, just 1 second,
Russian
Prof,
speaking. And
if you don't mind.
Opinion is divided whether to align
just 1 second, Prof.
to be part of Russia or to remain independent and consider Russia as a big brother.
Prof, just 1 second, Prof, if I can ask a question. Just 1 second. Just 1 second, Prof.
Nigerian students may not need to come home because yesterday was air attacks, sea attacks, and so on. Today is a ground field. They may go for a regime change, and once that one is done, it's a matter of time to anchor or just to impose a pro-Russian government. The way the previous was toppled with conspiracy from the West. Yes,
Yes, just a question along the line of something that you raised earlier about the U.S. including Ukraine in NATO. One is just wondering, how is that a problem? How is that a threat to anyone if Ukraine is an independent nation as well?
Yes, it is. It is because you cannot, you are closer to Ukraine. Russia is closer to Ukraine. And then the fact that Ukraine is being used to threaten Russia's security. Ukraine is not a member of NATO yet, but when interests are on the table, sometimes they break the law of saying only NATO when attacked, only NATO members when attacked, all of them will just come together. And there is every possibility of now division within NATO with the likes of Turkey and so on. In 1989, NATO sent its troops to Kosovo, though Kosovo was not part of NATO. And that you cannot, even you yourself put yourself in the shoes, you will not allow your neighbor who was part of the former Soviet Union to now go into coalition with countries very far away, very far off you, then to come and not giving you guarantee for your own security. And therefore, and again, it was, Russia was also flabbergasted by the toppling of the pro-Russian president in the past with so many conspiracy theories and so on. This is something that the ideal neighbors first before those who are very far away, no matter how influential. And again, Ukraine ought to have read it between the lines to at least have a hidden talk with the Russian president that we are together, nothing will happen.
Okay.
And now it's a situation in which America, to be fair to America, America said no American troops will be there on ground to fight for Ukraine. But America has troops in Germany, it has in Poland, and so on. Okay. The only Ukraine should have been playing the same game as Belarus, to be much friendlier to Italy, even if it is independent. Independence will remain independent. I don't think it will be annexed like Crimea, which was very sensitive, very strategic to its own security. It is about geopolitics.
You have provided extensive background to this,
yes,
and I think for a lot of people, they can approach this better now based on that background. Let's take this back to Ukraine, where it's all happening with Jesuni, the Nigerian in Ukraine. And first, I must commend, as you were speaking, I saw the calmness with which you spoke, and I must commend that because it clearly shows that you are, taking this on well. But for how long more? Because if the plans for evacuation, God forbid, if things don't let up in the coming days, I wonder what your plans are, and by extension, for other Nigerians. Yes. Do you feel safe enough, really?
Well, you have to look at all the dynamics. You have to look at all the dynamics. I do believe that in time all of this will be resolved. Now, regarding if maybe the airspace is not open, maybe in a couple of days, like one of the speakers did say, it is much more dangerous for you to be on the road. It's much more dangerous for you to be on the road because you could be a victim of an unintentional strike, okay? And then again, you also have to take into consideration that you're a foreigner in this land. So you cannot just be loose about your movement just because you're trying to seek for your safety, that there are no guarantees of that. Okay, so even if there are maybe an extensions of time in terms of getting the full consensus on as to what to do, I would still rather urge Nigerian students to remain calm and still stay indoors. That's still the best decision, I would still say. I believe that this is being worked on. I mean, generally, the international community, they are also still working on making Putin see reasons why this should not hold. But nonetheless, we cannot determine how long this is going to be. And so, unlike, one of the speakers also said there are, workings on having an evacuation. And I believe that very, very soon it will be done. I believe that there can be diplomatic arrangements that gives exclusivity for these, flights to come in just mainly for evacuation. Because like I said, and like all the speakers have said, civilians are not the targets, neither are residential areas the targets. So using that information, then we can make some basic, decisions and not just run into hasty and knee-jerk decisions. So I would say let's be calm and let's watch what happens. But while we're doing that, we stay indoors. The residential areas in most of these locations that are mentioned on news tabloids are not affected. They're not affected. It's basically military installation and military infrastructure. Those are the places where you have a lot of targets. But unfortunately, like I said, because there will be people around and there will be civilians around those places, they will be definitely affected by the airstrikes and the military parades. But if you're indoors and you're within a residential, a residential place, you would not be affected. So I would say the need to be calm and to be poised is very, very important right now. Okay. And I also believe,
Just a quick one. When you talk about, you've said it over and over again that people, should remain calm and all of that. And I remember that Twitter conversation that the Honorable mentioned as well. There was that call to remain calm. I remember one of the speakers, one of the students, I believe in Ukraine, saying it's not easy to be calm. So how easy is it for you and for as many people as you can speak for? How is it to remain calm when you can hear all of those noise and bombings and all of those things?
Well, first of all, I think the way that you can do that, or the way to remain calm, is first of all to, like I said, know that you are not even the target. And yes, there's a lot of tension out there, but knowing that you are not the target should give you some sense of peace. Of course, generally, on a holistic scale, it's difficult to be calm because, there is actually, invasion. There's an invasion. So it's difficult for you to generally remain calm because there are so many news here and there. Russia is doing this, Ukraine is fighting back. So many groups are being created, Telegram, WhatsApp, and, Twitter is going haywire. So definitely, from the external pressure, there would be a lot of impetus not to remain calm. But at the same time, you also have to look at things from a very strategic perspective. You have to see what is really going on. First of all, you are not the target. It's not like it's a refugee war where they are attacking any black person or where they are attacking anybody who's just on the road. That's not what's happening.
Okay.
So first of all, you're not the target. Yeah. So if you're not the target, you have to work with that information. Now, if you're not the target, then you also have to look at stipulated regulations that will help your safety. So what you do is like the Ministry of Foreign Affairs did say, stay at home, stay indoors. Okay, stay indoors and connect with as many people as you can to all stay indoors. Okay, so that you restrict the level of danger and pain that you might encounter while all of this is going on. Yeah.
Honorable, so this is the situation that we find ourselves now. Students are encouraged to remain calm, and you spoke about that Twitter conversation and everything. From all of that, one is wondering how the students, on the one hand, are taking all of the information that is coming to them. But with the airports shut and almost nothing doable now, what are the options for government? What are the options for the House of Representatives?
Well, the most important thing is the Embassy of Nigeria in Ukraine is fully in charge of coordination, and they have issued out emergency numbers very early, since 26th January. And another thing is that the National Assembly are already liaising with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and other arms of government, and preparations are in full gear. There is government-to-government talk at a diplomatic level to see that the airspace is opened for evacuation. Once that is done, Nigerians will be moving. But most importantly is for our children, the students, and other citizens to remain calm and remain at home. And yes, there will be tension when you hear bombings around you, but you are not the target, and going out will further endanger your lives. As I said, there is issue of language, communication, and so on. So once you leave your home or your school, it will be difficult for the embassy to get in touch with you and pick you up during evacuation. The embassy have profiled all Nigerians and students in Ukraine. They have their contacts, they know where they are. And so during evacuation, it will be very easy to pick you up if you remain calm and remain at your residence or at the address that is already known by the embassy. That is the basic advice.
All right. On a final note, so we're closing in about a minute. Prof, I mean, this conversation has largely doused the fears and, the tension, especially for Nigerians in Ukraine. But on a wider scale now, there are fears that this might snowball into something bigger, perhaps another world war, God forbid. Do you see that happening? In 30 seconds, if you can, Prof.
Yes. In fact, I saw it coming. And the only thing the Nigerian embassy should do now is to look for shield underground somewhere, perhaps within the embassy itself, to keep Nigerians safe. There's nothing they could do for now, because the entire war may not maybe for hours or just a few days, because Ukraine is not a match for Russia, and no Western country will take part in it. And therefore, it is about flogging the stubborn young rather than going into war. And to be fair to President Zelensky of Ukraine, who tried to reach out to President Putin, he was unable. And it was the French President Macron who relayed the message that he wanted to talk to him. It was too late. It was too late because the warnings had been there for long. And therefore, we just pray for an end, because we in Nigeria, those of us from Borno, know how terrible a war can be.
Absolutely.
And therefore, we should not even wish a war for your enemy. It must end. Yes, it must
Prof,
end.
I think, in fact, you just said
no
it may
need
not...
to even talk about evacuation, because this is just a copy, simply because Western countries are doing it, and that Nigeria should also do it. And why is it that when it is happening, when the West that invaded another country like Libya in the past, Nigeria didn't go to evacuate Nigerians. It was afterwards. The same thing when U.S. and coalition invaded Iraq and Syria. Why Ukraine is specifically different? Ukraine is a friendly country. Russia is a friendly country. And therefore, I reiterate my earlier stand that Nigeria should remain neutral.
Right.
We don't even need to protest an invasion or no invasion, because
okay, well, Prof, I think that point has been made. We're totally out of time now. I actually overshot the 30 seconds, which I gave. Prof, if you can hear me, pardon me, we're totally out of time, but I think, in fact, you have said that this might not snowball into a World War III. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. But I'd like to thank you so much for your insightful contributions. Professor Khalifa Dekwa, is a professor of international relations, joined us from our Maiduguri studio. We've also been speaking with Honorable Yusuf Buba, who is a chairman, House Committee on Foreign Affairs, and Jesuni Omoyi, who is of Kharkiv National School of Economics at Kiev in Ukraine, joined us live as well. Would like to thank you so much, especially Jesuni. I wish you the very best, and please stay safe. Well, that's been our conversation on that one, but we're not done just yet. We're going to pay attention to another issue domestically this time around, so please stay with us.
Well, that's our next conversation this morning. Of course, there are those who are saying, wait, this fuel crisis could be exacerbated by the Russia-Ukraine crisis, but we're not going there right now. Let's stick with the ones that is local. There are those who say, while that report speaks to both sides of the divide, where there are good fuel supply in some areas, there are those areas that they still have, quite significant queues. But yet, there are other communities that do not have any of these fuel supply at all, and one is wondering exactly what is happening. All of that in the mix of the blame game. It's your fault, it's not my fault. We supplied fuel to spec, so where did this off-spec fuel come from? All of these, we'll have to have this conversation with two gentlemen who joined us online this morning. Evacuation is immediate past president of NUPENG. He joins us from Port Harcourt, alongside Peter Esele, who is former president, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association Pengasan, and former president, Trade Union Congress. He joins us from Benin City. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. Let me begin with you, Mr. Acheze. This blame game is happening, and I don't know, first of all, from all that you know, where's all of these coming from? Is this normal? Is it normal for us to have this kind of back and forth, the blame game over such something that is supposed to be simple?
Well, thank you for having me this morning on this very important issue that borders on the economy of this great nation. It's very unfortunate that each time we have challenges like this, we keep hearing a blame game that goes back and front. But to be honest, until we turn the hand of the clock in holding people responsible and accountable in whatever decisions they make, what has happened rightly is a lack of responsibility from the regulatory agencies vis-a-vis those who monitor the product, those who also sign the various documents that allow this product to come into our country, Nigeria, for circulation. That has also impacted us this way. If it is, you will agree with me, if it is an international community or a well-developed nation, it's expected that those who are involved should have by now resigned their offices for lack of responsibility that has also caused this nation these hard pains that we're going through. So for me, the agencies that will be held responsible.
Let me ask Mr. Esele perhaps the same question, but from your perspective and from your understanding of things that have happened in this sector over time, where, in your opinion, did this gap, or could this gap have come from? There are those who say in the days of the DPR, they would have done the needful. But then some of these, people who supply this fuel say they did the needful. Even the new regulatory agency can confirm that they supplied fuel to spec. And now this.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. First thing is, let's look at the foundation of who we are as a people. I always like to look at the causes and not the effect. Now, what is the cost? The cost is this is who we are. We do things shabbily. Therefore, we've had these issues in the past. Remember, I think in the days of Abacha and the military government, we also had petroleum product that was brought into the country that has high sulfur content. Now, this is very clear. It's easy for you to decide whose fault this is. One, whoever brought in this product is responsible for that. First, what is our spec? Our spec is about 5% methanol, not higher than 5% methanol. What we have right now is 20% methanol. There are other countries that do between 2 to 3% methanol. So what we have is 20% methanol. And why do we have 20% methanol? Who was supposed to who was supposed to check that? Now we're also supposed to have Standard Organization of Nigeria. So what you have is a collapse in terms of those who are supposed to oversee what is there. And the danger is, if we don't check this now, there's only one body bringing in, one agency bringing in products to the country, and that is NNPC. So let's assume you now deregulate that sector. Every marketer can bring in products. So if we cannot even check a single entity bringing in product, just imagine what will happen when every marketer start bringing in product. Who will now carry out those various checks to make sure that we actually get spec? Our spec is sent to the country.
Mr. Esele, you know, it's interesting, for want of a better word, when you say that it's only one agency that is supposed to be bringing it in. So where are all these other names coming from? Duke Oil is talking, ONO PLC is talking. Meanwhile, NNPC is supposed to be the sole importing organization of petrol into the country. Help us understand.
Now, what NNPC is doing is, NNPC is the one that we all see. So NNPC is the one that is head responsible, is chosen by the government to bring in the product. So Duke Oil, Oando, those are all contractors for NNPC to help get in the product. So if Duke Oil and Oando, the MROS or whoever are bringing in this product, so it's expected that NNPC, all the regulators, are expected to go through it and notice who is bringing it. Let's take, for example, you deregulate. You have Chase and Sons bringing in product. You have Ijoma bringing in product. You have John, and you're going to have more than 20 or 30 people now bringing in product. My worry is when we get to that bridge, if we cannot even regulate or check what 2 or 3 agents, Oando or MROS is bringing in, so how are we going to do that? So
the question here, I get that, but the question here, the challenge here, in my opinion, is, okay, right now, from what you're saying, as you said earlier, the only organization many people have known over time has been the NNPC. One then is wondering, is the NNPC taking responsibility? Is the NNPC coming ahead of this one, getting ahead of this one and saying, it's our bit?
Yes, NNPC should, I read their response, apologizing to Nigerians. But that's not enough. Now, NNPC have apologized to Nigerians. Now, we also now need to know who brought in the off-spec. If it's Oando, if it's MROS, then they have to also face the music. Because just as Igwe has alluded to, everyone along the chain must be held accountable. Because even cleaning the dirty petrol is going to cost not less than 100 billion for you to do that. So that in itself is cost. So who is going to bear that cost? In other parts of the world, we'll be talking about what they will be paying. And then I've read the various reports, and I think it's very embarrassing. I read the statement from Oando MROS, and I also read the ones that came from NNPC, which was everybody trying to pass the buck. That's not the issue. The issue now is we need to know who is responsible, and whoever is responsible must be held accountable.
Well, just to be clear, Mr. Sere, help us understand the process. We've listened to a number of other people, but perhaps just to have a little bit more clarity on this. What's the process when fuel gets, is it at the point it gets into Nigeria that we begin the test? Because we've received, you've also read all the reports, just as you've said. This one is saying it's not our fault, we supplied to spec, so person checked it, so agency checked it. Everyone is saying all relevant agencies checked it. And then we still have this. So what's the process? At what point are the checks supposed to be done before they get to the fuel tanks that supply to the people?
most of our product comes from process. So what is expected is that is even before loading, you're supposed to get your spec. The various tests are supposed to be conducted. And when you also arrived in this country, another test is also supposed to be conducted. So there are agencies of government that are responsible for those tests. Even an NPC, the various regulators, you alluded to it, DPRO was still DPRO. No, it's still DPRO. Just, as far as I'm concerned, they mainly just change the name. So that is the process. The process is test in process, test in Nigeria to confirm that you meet our specification. Now, if marketers are saying or importers are saying that is not our spec, then we now need to go back to look at what have we been bringing into the country in the past and why are we now having off spec instead of spec. So once we go through all of that, then we will help us to get to the bottom of this problem. If we don't get to the bottom of this problem, it's going to be worse when the market is deregulated.
Well, while we'll try to reconnect with Mr. Igwe Achese, the immediate past president of Nupeng, let me continue with you, Mr. Sele. Getting to the bottom of this, I mean, it sounds like rocket science. The House is investigating, the executive is investigating, NNPC is investigating, and the Minister of State for Petroleum. In fact, the Minister for Petroleum, the President, is also said to be interested in this as well. And you'll expect that getting to the bottom of it will be swift, seeing all the weight coming up on this one. But the names that have been mentioned, that have been thrown up, all of them have said, well, they did what was right. In fact, some say they have documents to prove that these products were tested and, I mean, it met specifications and all of that. So with all these denials, who should be doing what right now? Is it government that should be coming up to say, well, fine, we dropped the ball or what? Because it appears as though everyone is sitting back and saying, it's not my fault. So who should be doing what right now?
I think the first thing is, if the government knows they are right, the government knows who's wrong. They know where this problem is. But the fact is, the usual way that we address issues in this country, which is personal interest above every other interest. Because if we are to look at national interest, in a week you will know who is wrong. NNPC involved, NNPC will know who is supposed to carry out those checks. The various agencies of the state, they know. So our politics of looking at things from man, let me quote it, man no man, is what is actually dragging us back. There is no issue of government setting up. One thing is clear. When they start setting up committees such as that, is that they want the matter to go away. So it is not incumbent on the media to always shed light on it. Now, if Mr. A is wrong, bring out the document. Let the media see the document. Let us see it on China's TV and say, this is the document that was brought in. Let Owando MROS. This Owando is listed on the stock exchange. And it's very important for it to clear its name. So it can come out, Owando can come out and say, okay, this is what we supplied. And these are the spec we supplied. And these are the spec we have been supplying. And that way, Owando clears his name. But for everybody to come and say, oh, I did the right thing or I did the wrong thing, it's very easy to know who did what. Bring the documents, bring your facts, and let's see. And then let the press see it, because the press is the fourth state of the realm. So if anything is done in secret, that means something is wrong. Government is not run in secret.
Right. We have Mr. Achese back now, thankfully. So, Mr. Achese, help us understand how the heavyweights in this industry operate, because it looks like there are powers that are even beyond the government, because clearly, I mean, we've seen government move fast on other issues, and almost immediately there's some sort of, court process, arrest, investigation, and, things move very fast. We've seen government do that. But in this case, things have been moving so slow, and it appears as though they're trying to just push this into irrelevance. So do we indeed, as has been said, have, powers that be, as it were, in this sector, and we might not see anything come out of this?
Let me be honest to Nigerians. It's very sad and painful that we have the Minister of Petroleum who serves also as the president of this great country. And so when you say powers that be, it means that inclusive, on the line, inclusive, the president of this great country should also be held accountable and responsible in whatever difficult challenges we're facing today in the areas of the petroleum industry that powers the nation's economy. You will agree with me that when you say power that be, the president is involved, he's the minister of petroleum, despite you having the Minister of State under his, under him. He is the minister, so he should be held also responsible. Now, if the president himself is to take responsibility of what has happened, if he is to take responsibility of what has happened, it means it's for him to do the needful, no matter who goes it is, whether the GMD of NNPC, whether the Minister of State that serves under him is involved, whoever that is involved, being, such individuals or group of persons should be brought to book. That is the only way we can begin to say the issue of power that be does not play out. Otherwise, where we find ourselves today as a nation, where the president of the country serves as the Minister of Petroleum, and we're having this kind of challenges and difficult situation in the history of our nation, as the sixth, highest producer of hydrocarbon and gas, then there is something wrong with us. So for me, I would say power that be is a key issue, but if the president wants to clear his name in the issues of this, this untransparency that has cost us this pains as a nation, then he should take the right decision in bringing those involved to book. It's not just waiting for investigation. Before you take investigation, fire them. They should be fired, and then you can set up whatever investigation to investigate what actually happened for us as a nation to find ourselves in this kind of situation. It's sad. It's sad, my brothers.
And the concern is that this might happen again and again and again, and people will go scot-free because there were no repercussions this time around. So if we can perhaps help prod the government in the direction to go into, what documents should we be looking out for that might perhaps tell us a story? What areas should we be looking into, should the government now be looking into? Maybe at least from this conversation, government can take a cue, if it hasn't already, and do what is right by Nigerians. So where should they be looking into to get the answers?
Well, it's clear, the documents are there. The document that was approved for the importation of this product from Brussels, the document, those who also approved, there are, the processes of testing and laboratory clearance are there. So if this clearance is from NNPC, because NNPC is involved, the regulatory agencies are also involved, PPMC that are also key stakers of this product are also involved. So if every agency, because if you look at that document of approval, about also giving the right to say this product should go out into the market for distribution, then you will find out all those who are involved. Mr. President is there as a minister, and so it's only that this document, is it approved, yes, he signs off. Now, the GMD, if he signs on behalf of the minister, if the Minister of State also signed on behalf of the minister, who is the president of this nation, should also be held accountable. So the documents are clear, they are transparent, they are visible, they are not hidden. And so you can see the various, companies involved, vis-a-vis or Ando, MROS, coming to clear themselves that they passed through the processes and they meet the standard. And if they did not meet the standard, these government agencies, regulatory agencies, wouldn't have approved it for them. And so if they do, then there is issues of transparency. There's an issue of corruption that is also so endemic in us that must be checked and controlled. If we don't, it will repeat itself. This is not the first time, it is not the second time, it's not the third time, and it will not be the last if we don't take drastic actions. Like I did mention, Mr. President should clear his name as the Minister of Petroleum in taking the drastic steps that Nigerians are yearning and expecting to see.
Well, Mr. Esele, you said earlier something that is, interesting along the line of what needs to be done, going forward. So, if you can take that a little further, what now should people be looking out for in this matter? You said agencies. If right now we're only talking about 2 organizations, and we're having this kind of challenge. Yet we are talking about a fully deregulated petroleum industry, in which, of course, will speak to removal of fuel subsidy and then complete deregulation, so as many people as may want to bring in fuel into the country will be able to bring in fuel into the country. Refineries will work, and they will be able to produce fuel at home and all of that. So if we are going to solve this problem long term, and we go into a fully deregulated sector, What are the things that we need to put in place now? What are the gaps that you have seen from this experience? And if we are to solve this problem long term, what are the things that you think we need to do urgently?
First thing is strengthening capacity. First we have to carry out an audit.
When you say strengthening capacity, in what, whose capacity now?
Now, first of all, the regulators. First, you have to do an audit. The first audit you have to do is to find out what is responsible for what is happening right now. So once you carry out that audit, you now find out that who is in charge. You see, it's not just, yes, the president needs to do something, but we need to find out that you work for channels. I'm not expecting Joe Momo to come to channels at 8 a.m. and come and interview Igwe and Peter Esele. No, that's your job designation. You are responsible for this interview. That is why you are seated there. So we need to find out who is that person responsible for signing off, and who is also that person responsible for ensuring that this product is moved from point A to point B. The president delegated his authority to various agencies to now carry out such function. So you go for that first to find out, are there certain inadequacies? Do they lack capacity to do what they are supposed to do? The laboratories, are they properly equipped? That's point number one. Point number two, you want to open it up. We have Standard Organization of Nigeria. Now, what is Standard Organization of Nigeria doing? If we are talking about spec, it's not only regulators, Standard Organization of Nigeria also make sure that what is coming to this country also meets our standard, and that includes petroleum products. That's another aspect you also need to look at. And you ask yourself, when are we going to meet local refinery demand? It's an embarrassment. It is sad that from 1999 to 2022, we cannot fix 4 refineries. 4 refineries have not been fixed, so we cannot meet our local demands. Therefore, we are facing this challenge. So what do? Fix our refineries, ensures that we meet our local demand. Hopefully, let's hope the private sector driven local refinery for about 600,000 barrels will come on stream and help us to meet our local demands. And then we will not have this off-spec that is coming in from Brussels. That will also help. And then when you now have a deregulated market, ordinarily we are supposed to be in charge of the West African coast. And if I'm to take this thing a little bit further, what this opened my eyes to is that just as we have dirty petroleum product, it's also possible that we have dirty food that we consume that endanger our health. Because nobody, this one is very clear, that nobody is even interested in what I'll call the national interest. I will also take you back. Don't forget that the last time we're trying to know how the consumption of rice in this country, we had to get part of our data from Indonesia. So now, how are we even sure that the data, as Igwe spoke to that earlier, when he talked about all the records are there, are we even sure that the records are there? Are we sure that people are really know that this is their job? This is what they are paid for. This is what they are meant to do.
Okay, Mr. Esele. Oh, it's an endless conversation almost, but speak to this same question in the light of the petroleum industry law that's active already. So part of the recommendations of the law is a fully deregulated sector. Is that to say, is this experience, this example that you've given, and this example that is happening to us now, this experience we're having, is it to say that we are not ready for the full implementation of that law?
We are not ready. I think I had done an interview to that.
We're not ready. We're not ready.
Even on channels, we're not ready. You see, we always do everything as if government is ad hoc. Government is systemic. Government is a process. You don't wake up and just make laws. It's a process. You go step by step. Now, how do you even imagine that you just signed the petroleum industry, you sign a law to
Okay, well, we'll try to reconnect with Mr. Esele. But interestingly, Mr. Chese seems to agree with that response. So let's take this to Mr. Chese now and get, his perhaps a conclusion of what Mr. Esele started on, whether or not we're ready for the implementation of the PIA. But don't forget, we already have the NMDPRA, which is in the PIA, and the authority and the commission and some other things. So why do you say we're not ready, Mr. Chese?
Honestly, we're not ready. You heard Peter Esele clearly. If you want to deregulate the system, it means our refineries are working, our consumption, local consumption production capacity is okay. And that is when you can talk about deregulation and then saying that that document is, ready for us to implement and work with. We cannot, as long as this country is concerned and the way we're going about issues, to say that we will deregulate on importation-driven economy. It is not done anywhere in the world. Nowhere in the world I will tell you we have hydrocarbon, crude oil and gas, and we are importing when we know that we have the capacity to refine our local consumption, and we are still dependent. No nation will do that. And so for us as a nation, if you hear today that this nation is going into deregulated driven economy, then it is corruption. It is corruption. Nothing beyond that. It is self-interest. It is to the detriment of the common man. It is the detriment to the middleman. And so we must begin to take into cognizance that there is nowhere in the world, no country, runs our economy when it's like living in an ocean and using saliva to clean your face or wash your face. And that is the situation we find ourselves if you say we are already in the regulated economy. No, we cannot find ourselves in that situation. How much is the common man's worker salary today if you say you're going into the regulated import-driven economy? What is the worker salary? Have they been able to implement the only minimum wage that was negotiated recently, 30,000? It has never been implemented. The inflation capacity, inflation issue of this nation is on the high side. Inflation is driven very high, and then workers cannot even feed, 3 square meals a day. And so you are saying, let us continue to drive this economy in an import-driven way. It's not possible. And so we are not ready. We are not ready, as Peter Selle rightly mentioned. We're not ready for the PIA that was being passed. And so that is the situation we find ourselves today.
Well, isn't the PIA meant to help us get to that destination, as it were? I mean, that's the idea of a law, essentially, to help us know what to do, things not to do, and the things to do in order to achieve that. So isn't this still part of the journey? And I understand that Mr. Selle is back, so if you can conclude on that thought. But add to that the fact that a law is essentially meant to get us to where we ought to be. So it's a journey, as it were.
Yes, I'm not disputing that fact. It's a journey. A law is supposed to be a journey. But first of all, you have to look at the foundation. You have to look at the foundation of that law, because the way the law is now, you pass a law for the betterment of your country, for the welfare, for the promotion of the welfare of the citizens. Now, if the oil and gas is deregulated today, it is going to be based on importation, which means you are exporting jobs. You are exporting jobs and creating poverty for your people. And why will I say that? For every time you import petroleum products, you are ensuring that refineries in Europe are making more money. And then you're also ensuring that the refiners in Europe have their jobs, while the refiners in Nigeria have no jobs. So at the end, your laws are supposed to be a catalyst for growth, catalyst for employment, catalyst for social well-being and social cohesion. That is what laws are supposed to be. But if your laws don't fulfill any of that, then you are not ready. Then you are not ready for growth. So all we are doing is hard work.
Peter Selle, former President, Petroleum and Natural Gas Senior Staff Association of Nigeria, and former President, Trade Union Congress, thank you so much for your time this morning, as well as Igwe Acheze, immediate past President of NUPENG. Both gentlemen who join us online, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts this morning. All right, some of your comments. First to come is from Justina, who writes in about the Russia invasion. Please, let the Nigerian embassy in Kiev send phone numbers on television stations here so we can send to our children. I have 2 children there, and they don't have any information. A friend said her child in Kiev is calling the hotlines, and they are not responding. I don't know if it's the mainland he has. That's what the Indian embassy did, putting the hotlines on their national TV. Please, we are desperate.
Oh dear. This next one is from Chris Anozie on the evacuation plan, saying, how many citizens are we talking about? Where's the location? What's the coordinating plan? When did we issue a security alert? When did we issue the last travel advisory or evacuation notice? God have mercy on us.
On the same issue, Oluwafemi Agbeloa says, looking back at what's happening in Nigeria about insecurity and internal war with Boko Haram, bandits and kidnappers, have we been adequately protected even in Nigeria? Charity begins at home, he says.
And this one from Henry, still on Russian invasion in Nigeria's interest, saying it's reasonable to ask that Nigeria defines her interests before supporting any sides of a conflict. This is a very tall order, considering that since the days of yore, Nigeria has not been bold in aligning her foreign policy and politics to her development priorities. Neither has she made her diasporans walk tall wherever they are, including Ghana in our backyard. The Foreign Affairs Ministry, the Nigeria Institute of International Affairs, the NIA, Diaspora Commission, and other relevant agencies should be exchanging copious but intelligent notes from yesterday.
Well, more of that we definitely will bring to you on a daily basis here at Channels Television with our new program, Russian Invasion of Ukraine. It'll happen immediately after this program at 9 o'clock, to be hosted by Ladi Akeredoluwale. And of course, at 5 o'clock as well, the same program will be brought to you by a different set of anchors, Amarachi Ubani and Millicent Walker.
Absolutely. So stay with us for a blow-by-blow account. All the sides to this, particularly. It'll be a very interesting one. Well, that's our show for today, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.
Have a good weekend and God bless Nigeria. I'm Ayo Makinde.